All right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, or actually I should say boys and girls. We're at a startup conference, right? We're not that old to be called ladies and gentlemen, are we? Boys and girls, my name is Atin Batra. I'm an associate at Q Venture Partners, as you can see. We are a hardware fund, and I'd love to tell you more about us. But before I do that, let me set the stage for what is going to be a short, and I promise you, brief talk about the fundraising cycle that a hardware founder has to go through, right? I know that we have 30 minutes to go through this. I do want to leave a lot of time for questions, so I'm going to try and finish this in about 15 to 17 minutes. Is that okay? All right. Before I start, just a quick couple of questions. So how many of you are actually hardware founders? I don't think you're a founder. That's a lie. Okay. How many of you are hardware founders here in Hong Kong? All right, nice. And the guys who are hardware founders, irrespective of where you're based, have you raised money so far? From angels, from VCs? No? All right. Then that means that what I'm going to be saying is going to be helpful in some way, I hope. Sorry. My mother just messaged saying she wants me to take photographs. I'll probably do that later. Okay, so let's begin quickly. So I've got 3 sections. The first one is a quick introduction about us, about the firm. The second one is the funding life cycle. And the third one, I've put together just 2 slides where I want to talk about the one big opportunity that we see for hardware founders and the one big threat for hardware founders in today's world. So let's quickly go through that, okay? If it works. Yes, it does. All right. So this is Q Venture Partners. We've invested in 15 companies so far. These are basically the verticals that we focus on. These are some of the companies that we've invested in. There are 2 companies that are not on the list because they're still stealth. But generally what we really like, and that's what is on this slide, is enabling technologies. And the way that we define enabling technologies is basically anything that is fundamental, that is core to building a hardware product. So batteries, chips, AI or components, powers, like all of that stuff is the core fundamental of any hardware product, and that's the sort of stuff that we like to invest in. However, having said that, we also do invest in verticals. So we focus on consumer health, Industry 4.0, and home vehicle, which is obviously the next big thing in terms of smart home, smart city, right? This is the team. This is actually the 2 co-founders and the general partners. So we've got Larry Tsai and Henry Tan. They're the 2 GPs. Larry Tsai has actually got more than 2 decades of experience building hardware products for big firms as part of the firm, but also as a consultant outside of the firm. And that's something that we'll talk about in a bit. But basically, he leads a firm called Q Design Studio, which is a product design and development studio based here in Hong Kong with offices in Silicon Valley, Shenzhen, China, and other places. Henry Tan is an experienced investor. He is an MIT alumni who moved back to China to work for Bain & Company, but then moved on to work with 2 fashion retail brands that he helped take public here in Hong Kong. So he understands finance really well. And he's been doing angel investing in startups as part of his family fund. We've got a very good team of advisors, we believe, that helps us cover all sorts of different aspects of building a hardware product, whether that's deep tech experience, but also consumer experience. So we've got Lisa Fetterman, who's the founder of NomiQ. I don't know if you've ever heard of her, but she's a YC startup and also a hacks startup, actually. It's a sous vide machine. She's a very active advisor for us. Dean Ho, who's a biomedical professor at UCLA, helps us, gives us advice on the health tech side of things. We've got Bill Burnett, who's the head of design at Stanford Design School, and obviously he gives us a lot of experience. He brings a lot of experience to the table from a product side of. This is the company that I was talking about. So Larry Tsai is the CEO of Q Design Studio. It's a product design development studio that has been around for about 22 years now, with the Asia office here in Hong Kong for about 12 years. We worked with some really big products, some really big companies, including Fitbit. We were the manufacturing partner here in China for Fitbit for almost 6 or 7 years. So lots of experience helping big companies as well as startups build their products here in China. All right, so that was the introduction. That's out of the way. Now let's get to the meat of the content, right? This is what you're here to actually listen to, right? So let's talk about this. So basically, any hardware founder, as with any founder, sorry, let me see if I can just take this up. All right, this is easier for me. As with any hardware founder, as with any founder, you'll see that if a startup goes through different phases of development, and simultaneously they also go through different phases of funding, and they're almost linked together, right? So for a hardware founder, it'll probably be concept, design, prototyping, manufacturing, and then scaling. And depending on what phase you're in, you'll be needing to raise funding accordingly, right? I'm going to be talking about all of these just in the next slides, so we can dig into all of them, right? So just keep this graphic in your mind so that you understand just where in the product phase, product development phase we are, and then we can talk about the fundraising. Right, so the first one, if you've just got a concept, and this is like on the back of a napkin, on the back of my school notebooks, sort of a phase. So if you've got a hardware concept, at this point in time, you're basically just the founders. So you're going to be putting in the time, money, the effort, and therefore it's what we call the bootstrap stage, because this is you're putting in all of the money, right? There are two things that I do want to point out at this stage. One is the fact that, at least for us, and I know for a number of other VCs or investment professionals, they always like to see hardware teams with more than one founder. And the reason is very simple, because no one person can cover all aspects of a business, right? So you need someone who understands how to run the business, how to sell, but you also need someone who understands how to build a hardware product. And that's why we always say, ideal to have more than one founder in a team. I can see those two founders in the back fist bumping each other because they're obviously a comprehensive team. So that's a good thing to see. The second thing that I want to point out is the costliest mistake. Genuinely, and it pains us to see this, but the costliest mistake that any founder, irrespective of whether you're hardware or software, a mistake that you make is not having a founder's agreement in place. I cannot tell you the number of sob stories, number of founders who've called me at 11 p.m. and cried on the phone just to say that I'm having a problem with my founder, I don't know what to do. So that's the first advice that I would give to any founder, irrespective of whether you're hardware or software, but especially in hardware, because you do have tangible products. So make sure that you've got a founder's agreement, right? And usually this is the sort of stuff that you're thinking about at the concept stage, at the very, very beginning, which is why we're talking about this under the bootstrap stage, right? Sorry, I have a sore throat. The next one is, sorry, did someone say something? Oh, no, okay. The next one is the one that I really like to talk about because it's friends, family, fools. It's basically the kind of people that you meet at Christmas gatherings and Thanksgivings and Diwali and all of those Indian festivals and all of the festivals, and you basically pester them to give you the money, right? But the one thing that all founders must be careful of, and which is what I've mentioned in the last line also, the onus is on you to ensure that these people understand the exact risks of investing in you and your business. The one, I don't want to repeat my words, but the one biggest mistake that every founder makes is to take money from their family, but not tell them that they might lose all of it, and this just leads to bad blood in the family for generations to come, I believe, right? Sorry, so don't do that. Be very, very careful about that, right? And so this is the friends, family, fools round where people basically don't look for a lot of documentation. They're just going to be trusting you and your word, and that's why they're putting in the money. It's also not going to be a large amount of money, right? This is an interesting one. So this is where basically you go out into the big bad world and you try and raise money from externals, people who don't know you intimately, people who you do not have an established relationship with. So you're now at the angel stage. Usually this is just about where you've done the first prototype, or you're just at that stage where you've got something tangible to show, whether it's a looks like, works like prototype, or it's just a looks like prototype, so that you can convince this person that you've actually got the right idea and that where you're headed is the right direction, right? So this is where you're actually going to go out and find an angel investor. Usually these angel investors are entrepreneurs who've exited and made money, and they can now actually invest back into the community, right? A lot of them are also high net worth individuals who basically are maybe fed up of investing into a bank account and want to invest in something that's a little more risky. By choice, by the way. Into something more risky by choice. But that's an angel investor, right? Again, not a lot of documentation, very simple, not a lot of money also, but the good thing, and that is the one thing that I would suggest you definitely keep in mind when you're raising an angel round, is to compile an advisory board. This set of people who are investing in you, who are ex-entrepreneurs, who have had that experience, who've been through that journey of entrepreneurship, can help you much more than any VC can, including myself, including my team, including anybody, right? Anybody who's an entrepreneur can really give you the lowdown on being in the trenches, right? So they can actually help you, guide you through that entire journey of entrepreneurship. So it's at this stage where you're raising the first external money that I would suggest, or I mean, we definitely as a firm always suggest that you should have an advisory board set up, right? Usually that's also your angel investors, so it helps to have the same kind of people. This is basically what we're going to be covering. The last sort of step of fundraising is when you go out to the venture capitalists, right? Or the vulture capitalists, as some people call them. But basically, what you're trying to do now is you're trying to get larger sums of money, because you're at that stage where you need to give a PO. You need to give a purchase order. You need to give a manufacturing order to your manufacturing partner, and you need much more money, right? So you're going to be needing larger checks. So you go to a venture capitalist and you raise money from them, right? A couple of things about venture capitalists. So when you go to a venture capitalist, be absolutely sure that your documents are in place. And I'm going to try and go through the process. So when you look for a venture capitalist, be sure that you've got your documents in place. Because the one thing that pisses off, sort of, or throws off a VC more than anything else, is asking for a data room or a due diligence room and not having access to it within the next 24, 48 hours, right? There are some teams where you reach out to them and say, yes, we're interested in investing. Can you send us a data room? And then 3 weeks later, we receive a data room, by which time we've already moved on to receiving other pitches and talking to other startups that we then probably feel are much better investments, right? So the one thing that I would always advise before you go to a venture capitalist, always have your documents in order. So usually it's a data room, it's the investment documents. So are you going to be using a convertible note? Are you going to be using a safe? Are you going to be doing a price round? And if so, then do you have the documents for that, right? So that's generally what I would say you should always have. Other than that, when you get to the venture capitalists and you start speaking to them, be absolutely sure that you understand the formation of that document. In any document, in any investment document, generally there are two kinds of terms. Standard, there are two kinds of terms. There's the financial side of terms, and there's the control terms, right? Try and understand the difference between the two. The financials basically is how much am I investing, how much percentage I'm getting, all of that finance stuff. The control stuff is actually where the entire difference lies, right? So the control is, can I appoint a board member? Can I remove a board member? As a venture capitalist, I'm saying from that perspective. Can I appoint, can I remove a board member? Can I remove an executive? So can I fire you as a CEO and appoint someone else? This is the sort of stuff that's all mentioned in the control section of the documents. And so be absolutely sure that you've understood what is there in the financials, but also what is there in the control section of any document, right? So that's generally about venture capital. Oh, and the last thing, definitely I've sent, is it's never about the financials, right? It's always about value add. So what more can that venture capitalist provide to you? So for example, for us, right? We give you the money, but we also give you access to our GP, Larry Tsai, who has this other company called Q Design Studio, which has been making products in China for 20 years. And so you get access to all of this expertise, this hardware expertise that's been built over 2 decades. And that's what is the value add. That is why you come to us and not go to somebody else. It's not the money. Really, it's not the money. Because we're not in for the return, we're in for the ride. Right? Okay, the one last thing that I did want to share about funding for hardware startups, obviously, is crowdfunding, right? There's a problem with the deck, but basically this was a very funny GIF that I pulled in. It just goes from a 0 to a million and then boom, bust, right? Because the idea is that crowdfunding, what it looks easy and it's very seductive, and especially for hardware founders, it's the next thing, right? It's the new thing. It's not that easy. It takes a lot of planning. It takes a lot of effort to actually get to the $1 million fundraised mark or whatever have you. And it's also, you still have to deliver. You get the money, but you still have to deliver. And that is why the one thing that we've seen, I think broadly in the ecosystem is the increasing failure of hardware startups who have crowdfunded but have not delivered their product. And just generally, from an ecosystem perspective, that's not a good thing, because we're eroding all of the credibility that we have, right? We're losing the trust of the people who are actually putting in their hard-earned money into our product. So the only thing that I would say is crowdfunding is a great way. It's a great platform to raise money for hardware startups. Just be very careful to deliver and to plan properly, much in advance of the whole process. So I come to the last section of my presentation. I've got 1 more minute to finish it. Basically, what I wanted to talk to you about is the opportunity and the threat. So let's talk about this. So what we feel, and this is what we genuinely feel, hardware is no longer hard, right? You can just ask for help. There are so many people out there who are building products for other people. And this only enables a hardware founder to actually not have to worry about hiring somebody who's an electronics engineer because he's the only one who knows how to fuse all of the chips together. You don't need that anymore. You need to have somebody who's a good AI programmer who can build a software, and then just have somebody else manage all of the hard components. And that's the advantage of being a hardware founder in today's day and age. That's why you're in the golden age of hardware. It's because of that, because you've got accessible help out there, right? The one opportunity also is the fact that there's a convergence of so many different things, right? You've got breakthrough technologies, you've got lower costs, you've got advanced manufacturing, you've got 3D printing. Not only 3D printing, you've got people 3D printing in carbon fiber. You've got 3D printing in metal. You've got 3D printing in multi-metal, right? Like, you've got so many different options out there to manufacture your products. And you've also got better components, right? Like, it's what they call the Moore's Law, right? Every year, there's a 10x jump in the component, right? And that's what makes it, once again, the golden age for hardware today. Because of the convergence of all of this. And you're able to focus on building value and business models in other ways. You're no longer, I'm no longer selling you just this watch. I'm selling you the app behind it, the insights behind it, the AI behind it. And that's what is important. That's the new business model for hardware. It's not hardware. It's software in the Trojan horse that is hardware. Which also brings me to the last thing, which is, what's the one threat? The one threat is being the one-trick pony. The one threat is being the many, many, many variables that came and disappeared longer than we could say variable. And so in terms of that, the only thing that we would say is build a hardware startup, but be absolutely sure to build the core fundamental technology. That's the cornerstone of your startup that can then be applied in multiple use cases so that you never get bogged down because your one product did not work or it just bombed completely. Because you have that technology at the base, that fundamental technology that you can then leverage elsewhere. All right? That's it. That's basically my deck. I hope it was as well designed as the other ones. I really liked the design of the previous ones. Having said that, I'm more than happy to open up to questions. We've got about 8 minutes to go, and I'm sure there's at least a few questions, please. Anybody?
Any questions?
All right.
What's your opinion of ICOs?
I don't think the firm has an opinion, but if you're asking for my personal opinion, I think it's a lot of myth. It's a bubble, and it's probably going to burst at some time. It's good in the long run because then now people are at least thinking of alternative funding opportunities. But in itself, the ICO right now, I don't think it's a viable way of raising money or investing money as an individual. I don't know. That's my personal opinion, right? Sorry. Anybody else have any other questions? Sure.
Investor documents? Do you have a starter point for those investor documents that you mentioned earlier?
Absolutely, absolutely. So that's a good question. So if you're looking for, I think the easiest way to do this, if you're looking for convertible documents, look for SAFE, S-A-F-E, which is the YC convertible document. It's available freely online. It's literally a template. You have to change 5 things: your name, the investor's name, the investment amount, the date, and your signature name. And that's it. Literally, that's the document. It's right there. The good thing is it's an exhaustive document in the sense that if you want to remove something, you can remove it. And if you don't want to keep any of those terms, well, that's pretty easy. So that's safe. There's also the 500 startups document called KISS, K-I-S-S. Keep it simple, silly. I'm not being vulgar, seriously. And then the third one that I would recommend is if anybody here is a European founder or raising from a European investor, look for Seed Summit, S-E-E-D, Summit, S-U-M-M-I-T. It's an initiative by Seed Camp, which is a London-based VC. And they've basically built a set of template documents that are not only applicable in London, but also in France, in Germany, in Italy, and all sorts of different jurisdictions. So what they've done is they've got a compilation of documents that are applicable to different jurisdictions. Generally, that is where I would start if I'm looking at convertible documents. If your question is more about the price round, equity round documents, you can definitely find templates online, but the thing about those documents are, as I mentioned earlier, they always have this financial and control different sort of terms. And in that case, I would always recommend getting legal advice, proper legal advice. So don't try and create the document yourself. It's much too dangerous, to be honest, unless you're a lawyer, which is fine. But yeah, so there are templates for that, but I would recommend finding a legal advisor. Does that answer your question? Okay, good. Anybody else?
Questions?
No? Okay.
So
no worries, guys. I'm still here. Just look for the black t-shirt with a Q on it, or just look for my ugly mug. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I can give you my business card, and you can reach out to me if you have any questions we can discuss later. Right? Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.